Hello students, in this video we are going to see how to go about aggregate production planning strategies or techniques and the calculations involved. Since there are four different strategies, I am going to cover the first strategy in this part 1. But before starting the calculations, let us first understand briefly the sales and operations planning and aggregate operations plan. So sales and operations planning is the process that companies use to keep the demand and supply in balance by coordinating manufacturing, distribution, marketing and financial plans. Aggregate operations plan is nothing but a plan for labor and production for the intermediate term with the objective to minimize the cost of resources needed to meet the demand. So if you look at this schematic diagram from Jacobs about the overview of major operations and supply planning activities. The long range planning, which is usually 1 year, it involves almost a year. So there the strategic capacity planning is done usually for a year or maybe up to 3 years. Based on strategic capacity planning, the sales and operation planning for a medium range period, almost a year or 6 months, is arrived at. And this sales and operations planning has two components. One is the sales plan, the other is the aggregate operations plan. In this video we are going to learn about the aggregate operations plan. Right now, organizations employ different production planning strategies such as change strategy, stable workforce with variable working hours strategy, level strategy, or stable workforce with subcontracting, etc. Let us understand these strategies and the calculations involved with the JC company's example, which is on page 496 of Jacobs. You can read the page numbers which I have already mentioned here from 490 to 500 in detail so that you understand all the concepts explained by the author in detail. Below is the information which is given about the JC company, and we need to suggest the most economical production strategy which the company should adopt. So the information is given up from January to June for 6 months, and the demand forecast is already available in terms of the units. For example, January requires 1800, February requires 1500, and June requires 1600. So total for this 6 months, the total requirement is 8000 units. Also the number of working days are given. This will exclude the Saturday, Sundays, as well as some holidays, etc. So 22 days production days are available in January, 19 in February, and so on. June has the list, maybe only 20. Second list. February has the list. So in these 6 months we have 125 days available to complete this 8000 units. The costs given are material cost is $100 per unit, but since all the plants will have this material cost common, hence in this working the material cost is not considered. But if you have to calculate the total cost, then this material cost 8000 units multiplied by 100 units, $100 per unit will be the total cost for the materials for this entire period. Inventory holding cost is $1.5 per unit per month. Stock out cost, marginal stock out cost, in some of the strategies we will be going for stock outs, so there we have to consider $5 per unit per month. Marginal cost for subcontracting is $20 per unit, but if you consider along with the material cost, it will be $120 per unit. The hiring and training cost, whenever you hire workers, it will be $200 per worker. If you are firing any worker or removing any worker, you have to bear layoff cost of $250 per worker. The labor hours required is 5 per unit. That means for 1 unit production you require 5 labor hours. The straight time cost for first 8 hours each day, whenever a worker is employed for a full 8 hours, he will get $4 per hour. So that means in a day he will get $32. If he is asked to work on overtime beyond that 8 hours, then for every hour he will be paid 1.5 times, that is $6 per hour. The current beginning inventory is $400, and also the safety stock required to be maintained is 25% of the monthly demand. So with this information, let us start calculating the first strategy, which is the chase strategy. In this we are going to have a initial workforce, right? At the beginning of this January we have 53 workers with us, and based on that we are going to do the remaining calculations. Currently we have 400 units, as they have mentioned here. Beginning inventory is 400 units. The demand is 1800, right, for January. Let us just concentrate on January and do all the calculations, and then we will move to the next month. The safety stock, they have already mentioned, it is 25% of the monthly demand, that is 25% of 1800, which is 450. So what is the production requirement for this January month to meet this demand forecast and safety stock requirement? This will be calculated as 1800 plus 450 minus what you have currently with you, that is 400. So what you need to produce is 1850, and when you produce this 1850, at the end of Jan you will be left with 450, which is your safety stock requirement, right? And the next month we will open with this 450, right? Let us first understand this table. Demand for the next February is 1500. Accordingly the safety stock will be required as 375, right? So the production requirement will be 1500 plus 375 minus beginning inventory 450, so 1425, and when you end the month you will be left with 375, which is your safety stock requirement. So likewise you can do the calculations for all the months in the similar logic. And now we move to the second table. Now in the second table we have to now concentrate on the required hours of production and how many hours we have. So because we have to produce 1850, right, and every 1 unit we require 5 hours, 5 labor hours. So the total labor hours required in the month of Jan will be 1850 into 5, so which will be 9250. So if we get 9250, then we will be able to produce 1850. Now 9250 is for the entire month. we have 22 days in the month. So every and when we have 22 days, if you employ one person, he will be working for 8 hours, and in 22 days in a month, you are going to get per worker 176 hours, right? So if you employ one worker for 22 days in Jan, you are going to get 176 hours. But what you want is 9250 hours. So when you divide 9250 divided by 176, you will get the number of people who are required, number of employees, number of workers required, which comes to be 52 point something. So we can round it to 53, right? Because we cannot employ 52.5 workers, right? So we have to round it off to 53. Now once we have 53 workers, right, and we already have 53 workers, so we do not require to hire anybody, we do not require to fire anybody. That means for this month our hiring cost is also zero and layoff cost is also zero, right? So the only we have to pay these people at the rate for 4 hours $4 per hour. So for 53 people into 22 days into 8 hours into 4 will give you 37,312. Now this figure doesn't match the book figure, because book figure, the textbook figure considers 52 point that workers required, which is not correct, because once we employ 53 workers, we have to pay them for the entire hours as per the factory law. Hence this is the correct calculations. You have to pay 37,312. In the month of February, you require 1425. Again 1425 will into 5 will give you number of hours which you require, 7125. For 7125 we have 19 days available in the February. So if you employ one worker, you will get 152 hours in the entire month. So if you divide 7125 with 152, you will get the numbers which are required to be employed in this month, which is 47. We have 53. That means we need to now remove 6 people, right? So workers laid off 6, which you need to pay them $250 each. So 1,500 will be the layoff cost, and the straight line cost, again you calculate 47, right, into 19 into 8 hours into 4 will give you this 28,576. Next month again you calculate what is the required the production, what are the required hours, what is the required number of people. Again you need to remove 17 people, because you have 47, you require 30. Again 17 into 250 will be your layoff cost. So the total payment will be 4250 for laying off and 2160 for the straight line cost. In the month of April, again we require only 26 people. Again we'll be laying off 4 people. $1,000 will be the layoff cost, and 17,472 will be the straight line cost. But in month of May we require now 33 people, right? Because in month of May our production requirement suddenly increases 1150, for which we require this many hours, and then we require 33 people. We have only 26 people right now. So that means we have to now hire 7 more new people. For that our cost will be 200 into 7, 1,400. Please understand, when you are having layoff cost, you will not have hiring cost. When you have hiring cost, obviously you are not going to lay off anybody, so there will not be any layoff cost. So either of these two will be there. So when we continue like this, for 33 people we are going to pay straight line cost of this. In the next month, June, we require 54 people, so we have to literally hire 21 people back, and our total hiring cost will be $4,200, and then our total will be, the straight line cost will be 34,560. So for this entire 6-month period, the total hiring cost will be 5,600, total layoff cost will be 6,750, total straight line cost will be 161,312, and the total cost will be 173,662. And if you want to find out the overall total cost, you need to add the material cost, which is already mentioned here, $100 per unit into this particular 8,000, the total demand which we have satisfied. So this is how we will calculate, but for time being we will not be considering material cost. Only this 1,73,662 will be used for comparing with other three strategies, which I will cover in my next video, part 2. Thank you.